What does Donald Trump do yesterday? Executive action on an EMP. Why? Because it's the new space race. It's the new Manhattan Project. This is the new war that we're fighting. This is just like the Cold War when we were fighting against Russia to put a man allegedly on the moon. We've just never been back since. And they lost all the moon landing footage. I mean, does that make any sense to you guys at all? Why, like, seriously, answer that question. We haven't been back? Don't you think it'd be a good idea that we go back there just to kind of check things out? Aren't there things to learn on the moon? So what are they hiding from us? I go back to the Antarctic Treaty, where every country in the world, all the major superpowers, have a treaty that has been in place for longer than 50 years, I think it is, which basically prevents any civilian from going to the Antarctic area. Why is that? Are you familiar with any other treaty that's actually sustained the test of time for that long without being broken and there being an eventual war? So what's the motive for that treaty? Is it possible that we're living in that Truman Show today? We're living on the flat earth with the dome, the firmament. As we start to look around us, we start to wake up, our eyes open, maybe that third eye opens, we start to understand, wow, this isn't what I thought it was. Maybe instead of being a worthless blob of goo that came from nothing and then developing into apes that were oohing and aahing and then eating bananas like a bunch of idiots, maybe instead of that, we actually are the center of the universe. Maybe we are special. In fact, maybe there is unbelievable evidence of creation, but the government has decided to hide that from you. Why? Why is there so much misinformation? Why is there a giant disinformation campaign going on right now when it comes to things like flat earth? Why are people being hired by, like, Disney, Walt Disney, the mainstream media giant, so that huge YouTubers like Logan Paul and others can discredit it? If it's such a ridiculous idea and a conspiracy theory, then why do they need to discredit it? Why do they need to censor it, more importantly? Filter through search results now, you can't even find critical thinking and information on this topic. And yet here we are, I go back to space. What is Trump concerned with? The electromagnetic spectrum, of which falls EMP, high altitude EMPs, and then of course events that come from the sun. They call them solar flares. Have you ever looked up at the sky recently, especially if you're in the Southwest? Harvard just came out with a report about a month or so ago, a couple of months ago. They said that they're spraying the skies with chemicals to block out the sun. Have you looked up recently? You see the chemtrails? I've got footage of it. I've got planes at the same altitude, both spraying at the same time, and then a third one flying by, but it's not spraying anything. Oh, I thought it was the altitude. No, I've seen it with my own eyes. And then it becomes a milky white film hue of gunk. And I notice I have trouble breathing a little bit. I almost get like asthma. It's been like that the last couple of days. Is that a conspiracy theory? Are my eyes lying to me? Or can I trust what I'm actually seeing? But Christopher, the earth is a globe. I was told that when I was 1 year old. They said, look, this is a globe. Isn't it interesting? It's one of the first things that you're actually taught. The earth isn't flat, it's a globe. Even though for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years, they thought that the earth was flat. In fact, when the Bible was penned, they interpreted that the earth was flat. It actually says in Genesis, the actual word of God, says that a firmament was created, which was the heavens, and below that was the earth and the landmass and the water, and above that was another body of water. But a lot of people miss it. Oh, but Christopher, we have all these images of outer space that show that the earth is a sphere. Really? Where do the images come from? NASA. Oh, you mean the same NASA that is our government, our secretive breakaway government that hasn't been back to the moon since the 1960s. That NASA? Have you ever seen it with your own eyes? Oh, no, Christopher, but pilots, they'll tell us that the Earth is a sphere. If they have high enough altitude, they can see it's a sphere. Okay, well then how come none of the electronics account for curvature of the Earth when you're flying a plane? None of the engineering of bridges and train tracks, buildings, all kinds of infrastructure that goes for miles and hundreds and maybe thousands of miles, none of it accounts for, in its actual engineering blueprints, for the curvature of the Earth. I mean, if I was building a giant bridge in Key West for hundreds of miles, wouldn't I have to account for the curve? Or is it possible there's not a curve? and that we've been lied to for a reason. Again, I'm not saying it's a flat earth. I'm just saying they're covering it up. I'm just saying don't trust the government, don't trust NASA. Think for yourself. Do you really think that NASA would show live imagery of the alleged moon landing when there was probably a 90% chance of death of every single astronaut that was allegedly landing on the moon? Do you really think they would live stream that failure to the American public? No way. Did you know JFK, I'll have Alex pull this image, in his war room while he was still alive, before you know what happened to him by the deep state? You know the map behind him in the war room? Flat Earth map. What do they know? What does Donald Trump know? That he'd be engineering legislation through executive action to focus on what? Space. More importantly, what do they not want you to know?
Last you hide the shame, last you kill the pain, as it fills your veins, you're the one to blame. Hope your conscience haunts you the rest of your life. Look at what I've done. I had your back again, but you're the bastard son of thieves and cowardice. So I spit you out like you sold me out. I can't believe I defend you again and again, never again. Hear the sound of your voice, it's screaming. Last you hide the shame, last you kill the pain, as it fills your veins, you're the one to blame. Hope your conscience haunts you the rest of your life. Memories of you fill my head with the sound of your voice screaming. Last you hide the shame, last you kill the pain, as it fills your veins, you're the one to blame. Last you hide the shame, last you kill the pain, as it fills your veins.
Hey, how you doing? How's Bubbles in Space doing?
How's what?
Bubbles in Space?
Bubbles in space?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
No? You Mr. Kelly?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? You don't remember the question from Tampa about the bubbles in space coming up from the helmets?
No.
Yeah, you guys are in an underwater pool, remember? We know, just remember.
Spacewalks outside the International Space Station. We can see air bubbles rising up. Can you touch on how there are air bubbles in space?
On the outside of the space station, you'll liberate little pieces of, it's a really harsh environment out there, and the outside of the space station gets beat up pretty good. And sometimes, you'll see just little flecks of paint or something.
Could it be that you're filming in an underwater pool and you're not really out there?